He was a billionaire. She was a cleaning lady he had never truly seen. But what he discovered while following her after work turned his world upside down. Michael Raines, a billionaire and founder of the Silverstream Investments empire, built his life around one principle: control. His mansion in Windhill Heights, surrounded by high walls and wrought iron gates, was a symbol of that principle. Every detail, from the marble floors to the crystal chandeliers, was under his supervision. His business, his investments, his schedule, everything followed strict order. But when food started disappearing from the kitchen, at first just a bag of rice, a couple of cans of tuna, some apples, he felt something stir inside. Not anger, not suspicion, but the same instinct that had made him one of the wealthiest men in the world: the need to know, to understand, to fix. At first, Michael thought it was a mistake. Maybe Chef Franca, whose meals were as impeccable as her records, had forgotten to log some ingredients. Or maybe someone from the staff was sharing food among themselves. But something didn't add up. Michael didn't believe in coincidences, and his house was a machine where everything worked like clockwork. He decided to investigate on his own. He didn't call security or check the cameras. Instead, on a Friday evening, he parked 3 blocks away in a black sedan with the headlights off, hidden under the shadow of an old oak tree. He watched the gate, waiting for someone to give themselves away. He didn't expect it to be her. Eliza Thompson had worked as a maid in Michael's house for years. Quiet, nearly invisible, she blended in with the surroundings like furniture or paintings on the wall. She exited through the back door carrying 2 heavy bags. Michael felt a pang, not of betrayal, but of realization. He had never truly seen her. She was part of the system. She came in every morning, left in the evening, polished the floors, cleaned the silver. He knew her schedule but nothing about her life. He followed her. Eliza descended into the subway at Greenwood Station, her figure weaving through the crowd. Michael hadn't used public transport since college, and now every jolt of the train, every scent of sweat and metal, felt alien. She didn't look back. Her steps were firm, her face focused. He kept his distance until she entered an old apartment building in the Shady Road district. The building's walls were peeling, but the place was alive. Children played in the yard, music floated through open windows, someone laughed loudly. Eliza climbed to the 3rd floor. Her steps slowed as if each one took effort. Michael saw her wince and touch her lower back but continue walking. Through the thin door of the apartment, he heard her voice, soft, warm, nothing like the tone she used when reporting on carpet cleaning. Then another voice, a child's, weak and hoarse. "Mom, the doctor said the tests are worse. We're out of medicine again." Eliza replied instantly. Her tone was calm but firm. "Don't worry, Oliver. We'll manage like always." Michael froze. His mind tried to piece it together. Missing medicine, bags of food, disappearing pills from the cabinet in his bathroom. It all fit. This wasn't theft. It was survival. He left before anyone could see him, his chest tight with something new, not shame, not pity, but humility. The next morning, Michael sat at breakfast, staring at his coffee as steam curled in delicate spirals. Eliza moved around the kitchen as always, quiet, efficient, invisible. But now he saw her. He noticed the tremble in her hands as she set down his plate, the dark circles under her eyes, not from exhaustion, but from the burden she carried. He wanted to speak, to ask about last night, about Oliver, about the medicine, but the words wouldn't come. How do you start a conversation after years of silence? So he watched. He remembered. Eliza was never late. She never complained, never asked for a raise, never requested time off. Michael knew everything about her job, and nothing about her life. But she knew everything about him: what shirts he preferred, what coffee he drank, which books he left unfinished on the table. That night, he returned to her building, not out of suspicion or curiosity, but something else he still couldn't name. He stood in the dark hallway, listening to her speak to her son. "Mom, what if the pills run out?" Oliver's voice trembled. "We'll find a way, sweetheart." "We always do," she answered. Michael heard her voice crack, as if she were using all her strength not to cry. On Saturday, he followed her again. But this time, Eliza didn't go home with a box of worn books. She headed to a small community center in the Brixton area. The building was old, its walls covered in graffiti, the fence leaning. Inside, children swarmed her. A dozen, maybe more. They shouted her name, hugged her, tugged at her hands. She smiled, and that smile transformed her. She began reading aloud. Her voice was clear, confident, alive. The Eliza Michael had known as a maid disappeared. In her place stood another woman, a leader, a mentor, a light in a place most would fear to enter. Michael leaned against the wall, stunned. Eliza, who cleaned his windows and folded his towels, was running a free reading club for children, using her own books, her own time, her own energy. No support, no praise, no recognition, and he had judged her for the missing food. Something inside him shifted. It wasn't pity. It was admiration, pure, genuine, and powerful enough to make him rethink everything he knew about people, about life, about himself. The following Monday, Michael canceled all his meetings. For the first time in years, he called his assistant, Lucas, and said he was sick. Strange for a man who never missed a single day. But the idea of sitting in the office, discussing stocks and contracts, seemed absurd. He wandered the city, through places he hadn't seen in decades, the markets on Cobb Lane Street, narrow alleys covered in graffiti, tiny cafes with worn-out chairs. It was the same city that had made him rich, but he realized he never knew its true face. Everywhere he looked, he saw people, not clients, not partners, just people living their lives. They didn't need his money or his name. They just needed to be seen. A few days later, he went to the clinic on Hartford Avenue, where Eliza took Oliver. He waited outside, standing by an old street lamp. Eliza arrived, supporting her son, thin, pale, with dark circles under his eyes. She whispered something to him as she adjusted his coat. Michael saw her speaking to the receptionist. Her voice was soft, pleading. "Please, can we split the payment? I don't have the full amount." The response was curt. "Sorry, miss. Without full payment, we can't release the medication." Without thinking, Michael stepped forward. "Let me speak with Dr. Wilson." Eliza turned. Their eyes met. There was no anger, no surprise, just tired disappointment. Michael knew Dr. Wilson, who owed him a few favors from the past. He explained the situation without many details and simply asked for help. When Eliza came out of the office, she stopped in front of him. "Were you following me again?" she asked, her voice even but edged with steel. "Yes," Michael admitted. "At first out of suspicion. Then curiosity. And now? I don't even know anymore. Why?" She crossed her arms, her gaze direct. "I wanted to understand. At first, I thought you were stealing. Then I saw you were fighting. And now, I just want to help." She shook her head. "We don't need your help. I know. But I want to offer it. Not out of pity, but out of respect." Her eyes narrowed. She said nothing, weighing his words. Then she nodded, not smiling, but with something like acceptance. "We're not a charity case. You're right. You're stronger than anyone I know. That's why I'm here." She looked into his eyes, and in that moment, Michael no longer saw a maid or a shadow in his house, but a woman whose life was full of struggle, pride, and quiet strength. It changed him. He returned home and stood still, staring at the shelves full of awards, photos, and trophies. For the first time, they felt empty. None of it compared to what Eliza carried every day, her burden, in silence. The next Saturday, Michael returned to the center in Brixton. This time, he brought books, boxes of new editions with bright covers, books about space, animals, and adventures. He didn't tell Eliza. He just entered the hall and placed the boxes by the door. The children noticed him first. Their eyes lit up, and they rushed to the books, laughing and flipping through the pages. Eliza looked at him. Her expression trembled, not from fear, but from uncertainty. "I thought they'd like them," Michael said, lifting another box. She didn't answer but stepped aside, letting the children dive into the books. Later, as they stood off to the side, she quietly said, "They love you. Especially Oliver." "He's special," Michael smiled. "Wants to be a doctor?" "Yes," she nodded. "Says he'll find a cure, not just for himself, but for everyone." Her voice softened, and in her eyes, Michael saw something new. Not defense, but warmth. "You've raised an incredible son, Eliza." "I'm just a mother," she shrugged, but her eyes grew gentler. "I do what I must. Not every mother does. You fight, quietly but fiercely." She turned away, hiding her emotions, and together they watched the children reading, laughing, arguing. In that moment, Michael knew he wanted to be part of this. Not for fame, not for recognition, but for meaning. Saturdays became a ritual. Michael canceled meetings, skipped investor dinners, ignored calls. His employees whispered. Some thought he'd taken up golf, others suspected a romance. He never explained. Not because it was a secret, but because it was deeply personal. With Eliza, words were few, but every conversation was real. About books, children, life. Sometimes Oliver would sit beside him, reading slowly, guiding his finger along the lines. One day he asked, "Mr. Michael, do you think I can really become a doctor?" Michael looked him in the eyes. "You already are, Oliver. Right here." He touched the boy's chest. "And if your heart is even half as strong as your mother's, you'll change the world." Oliver smiled, and that smile stayed with Michael for a long time. But not everyone welcomed his change. His niece Laura, whom he raised after his sister's death, noticed he had changed. One evening she burst into his office, her eyes burning with irritation. "What's going on, Michael? You're missing meetings, handing out money to some programs with no benefit. People say you're losing your grip." "Maybe I'm finding something better," he replied calmly. She spat out her name as if it burned her tongue. "She's your housekeeper, Michael." "Her name is Eliza, and this isn't about her, it's about me," Laura scoffed. "If you want to play the savior, do it quietly. Don't destroy everything we built." "We?" Michael looked at her. "You mean the empire, control? That's not what I need." Laura left, slamming the door, but her words struck him, not because she was right, but because he saw how far he had drifted from who he once was. His life, his success, it had all been built on the fear of losing control. Now he was learning to build on something else: presence, trust. One night, Eliza called, her voice quiet, almost broken. "Michael, Oliver has complications. The tests are bad. Can you come?" He was at the clinic within half an hour. Eliza stood by her son's bedside, her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles turned white. Oliver was asleep, connected to machines. His face was pale but calm. Michael spoke with Dr. Wilson, who showed him scans and explained the risk. The surgery was possible but expensive, complex, with no guaranteed outcome. "Do whatever it takes," Michael said. "Money is no problem." Eliza came to him that evening. "I asked you not to get involved." "I know. Then why?" "Because I care, Michael. Because I can't stand aside." She looked at him, eyes full of questions. "What do you want in return?" "Nothing. No one does this much for nothing." "I do." She was silent, then nodded. "Tell me who you really are, Michael." He told her about his childhood without parents, about his sister who died too young, about Laura, about the emptiness money couldn't fill, about how he watched Eliza and saw not a thief but a fighter, and how her strength made him want to be better. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, tears filled her eyes, but she didn't let him fall. "Leave, Michael," she said quietly. "I will. But know this, I don't regret you. I admire you. And I won't disappear." She didn't reply but didn't stop him. That was enough. The next day, Michael received a letter from Oliver, written in uneven handwriting. Dear Michael, thank you for being different, thank you for seeing us. I don't know what will happen with the surgery, but I'm glad you're with us. You made Mom smile, and that rarely happens. Michael cried, something he hadn't done for years, and prayed, even though he didn't believe in God, because for the first time in his life, money couldn't fix everything. The day of the surgery was cold. The sky was covered with gray clouds. Michael drove them to the hospital. Eliza sat in front, her hands resting on her lap, still as if carved from stone. Oliver quietly hummed something behind, perhaps to chase away fear. At the hospital, everything moved quickly: signatures, documents, nurses. When it was time, they escorted Oliver to the operating room. Eliza kissed his forehead and whispered something. Oliver turned to Michael. Michael, if I wake up, will you bring me the biggest book about space? I promise, he said. About Mars and more. Cool, Oliver smiled, then was taken away. They waited in silence. Every phone call, every step in the corridor made them jump. Eliza sat staring at the floor. Michael was beside her, unsure what to say. Hours later, she leaned on him slightly, and he felt her fear become his own. When the surgeon came out and said, "He's stable." The surgery was successful. Eliza exhaled as if for the first time that day. Her hand found his, and she squeezed it. When they were allowed to see Oliver, he looked small among the tubes and monitors, but his chest rose steadily. The nurse said he responded to voices and moved his fingers. The road to recovery was long but possible. Eliza fell asleep on the hospital couch while Michael stepped outside to call Laura. She didn't answer, so he left a voicemail. I'm not who I was. I've changed. Laura, not out of pity, not out of guilt, but because I've learned to be present. If that seems foolish to you, so be it. But it's my truth. The next day, people came to the hospital. Neighbors, parents of children from the club, even strangers. They brought flowers, books, notes. Someone had learned about Oliver and Eliza and wanted to help. But Michael had already received more than he could have dreamed. He had built an empire on control, but real life's value was shown to him by a woman surviving on the edge and a boy whose dreams were stronger than illness. This story isn't about money or charity. It's about the ability to see, the choice to remain blind or finally notice those around you. If this text touched you, give it a like and share it, because sometimes the world changes not by loud words but by a quiet question. What if I was wrong?